Hi folks, while this R6 cools down in between engine running in cycles, I thought I'd take a moment to do a brief video about it. And the reason for that, I suppose, is down to buying second-hand parts. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. Take a look at the video and see what I've got to say about that. So, buying second-hand parts for bikes. Where do you stand? Where don't you stand? Where do you stand with a shop like ourselves when we come to fit it? Interesting question, because this R6 behind us unfortunately succumbed to a drop valve, as so many sadly do. And in the end, the customer needed to buy a replacement engine, which he duly did. Obviously, that engine is pre-owned. It came from a reliable source. It came from a reputable source. But once the bike was put back together, unfortunately, it didn't run very well. And the running was a bit of a mystery. So in the end, he brought it to our shop and we went through it. And when I say went through it, you know, we listened to it. It had a high idle. It had some other little issues. And it makes you think, well, okay, let's just have a little think about this. It's replaced the engine. So what else could it be? So it's high idling, could be an air leak. So throttle body's off. Have a little look around, certainly no air leak. What else could do it? Okay, it's a replacement engine. It's supposed to be freshly built. What if someone's mistimed it? So we open it up and yeah, the timing was out. It was marginal, but it was out. They had got that wrong slightly, but not enough to strike a valve or anything like that. And as it turns out, not enough to make it run well, because once we'd corrected that, it still ran bad. But it didn't. It ran good, then it ran bad, then it ran good, then it ran bad. Put it on the dyno, it ran like a freaking dog. And no error codes in the ECU, to the point where you're at a complete loss, complete mystery. Why is this bike doing it? The customer's being told, you know, oh, I've had one of them, it could be this. I've had one of them, it could be that. And of course, these are all things that we'll go through anyway. But ultimately, we got to a point where you just think, don't know what's wrong with it. Just don't know. So come to the conclusion that it's nothing the customer done. It's got to be something to do with the engine. So regardless of error codes, because we've got a cache of R6 spares, we figured we would just start going through all of the sensors on the bike, replacing them accordingly until we got it to either run nice or not. That way we could rule everything out. And then we came to changing the cam sensor. So engine position sensor, cam sensor, whatever people want to call it. Obviously there's two. You've got a cam sensor and a crank sensor. Both measure where the crank is and the camshaft is in relation to each other. So you can tell the ECU to do a certain thing at a certain time. And it was only when we got the cam sensor off our spares that we thought, well, that looks different. That's got a much shorter cable. Could be onto something here. And then when we took the sensor out of the top of the rocker box, sure enough, the shape was different. It was just still the same length, it's still a Hall effect sensor, but just the shape of it looked different. And you kind of think, maybe we have. Pop that in, sorted. Problem's gone away. So, I suppose my question about used parts is, as a customer, if you buy a used part and get a shop like ours to fit it, and you have a problem, or if you fit it yourself and you have to come to a shop like ours to diagnose it, who pays for the labour? Obviously, in this case, you know, this customer is going to be paying for our time to diagnose the problem. But really, it's not his fault. He bought something in good faith, and they had put a Yamaha R6 speed sensor where the cam sensor should be. Yeah, it's a Hall effect sensor, but clearly somewhere along the line, this is giving out different data to the cam sensor. So he's going to end up with easily a day worth of diagnostic labour. In actual fact, to be fair, we spent a lot more than a day on it, but it's a regular customer and you just get to that point, you think, well, how much do you charge? Where do you stop? But ultimately, you know, after a few days on and off the dyno, things like that, you know, the problem's been diagnosed. So he's now going to get a bill for that. And like I say, it wasn't his fault. I'm sure he'll go back to the seller. Perhaps he'll speak to them. But there's the thought, really, and it's a massive one, to be fair. Even down to things like warranty parts. You know, we fit a new part on your bike, it breaks, or it malfunctions, shall I say. You know, the manufacturer may stand the warranty on it, no problem at all. But we have to seemingly take that off and replace it. And most people expect us to do that for free. Whereas ultimately, yes, we were the installers, but we didn't manufacture the product. The product's covered under warranty. And in the past, when we've turned around and said, well, that's an hour and a half's labour, I'm not paying that. And on the flip side, you get some people say, how much do I owe you? It's a tricky one. The used part one. That's why we don't tend to supply a used part and fit it because of that. Because obviously if that used part fails, we know we're the ones that supplied it and we're the ones that's probably going to have to foot the bill. So where we can, all the time, we don't like to supply used parts. That's why we've always said, if you supply the part, we will fit it. And obviously if there's a problem, you know, you'll have to pay to have it removed and refitted in the future. But does that stand for new parts? It's a tricky one. I mean, there must be some other bike shops or even just general people out there that have been in this position. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. It's a big thing for shops like ours and others. Car shops, the whole caboodle. But ultimately, we had one heck of a conundrum on this bike. Solved because luckily we keep a cache of spares and now it's on here for running in. In actual fact, I've just heard a bing bong to tell me the ECU has flashed because whilst we're running it in, we're also collecting some data because it's a different engine. So we obviously opt to add some random sensors and remap the bike while we're doing it. So I'm going to go and finish it, but just a video really to get some food for thought from you folks out there in YouTube world on what you think. But there we go. I've got some videos coming up soon. So if you haven't already, please hit the bell icon so you can hear when we get a new video. And if you're watching this and haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. It all helps out from our point of view. You know, some of the content's interesting, some may not be. Obviously, everyone feel free to put their comments in the videos because if we can improve things in the future, we will try to. But being a small shop, we don't always get the time to do the full editing. So sometimes the videos are a little bit rough and sometimes they might not contain all of the content or descriptions that you want. So we can only improve ourselves if you help us. So once again, thanks for taking the time to have a look at this. Maybe share your thoughts with me.